So here we are back with Mike, a.k.a. Larry the Cucumber from Veggie Tales. Hey, Mike.
Hey, Tim.
So how did you go from failing Bible Chapel to teaching literally the world about Jesus, about vegetables, and about the Bible? And so how did you start? And I understand that you may have been the very first of this type of animation because you guys were just before Toy Story. So tell me about that.
Yeah, so I mentioned Phil wanted to be a filmmaker. I wanted to be a doctor. And so after we left St. Paul Bible College, I went back to Denver, where I was from. He went back to Chicago. We were going to go out to California and, finish off our undergraduate. So I was going to go into, pre-med, and he was going to go to film school. But he ended up landing a job in Chicago. He interned for a video post-production company, and they offered him a job. And so he said, hey, this is kind of what I want to do. So, I'm not going to move out to California. So I was kind of, left roommateless. And, what's more, I was back in Denver, and my parents actually were going through a divorce at the time. So it was a really difficult situation for me at home. And so I just really felt like I needed to get out of there, to move on. And so I packed up everything that I had in my red Ford Fiesta, which showed up in the Cheeseburger song years later, and moved out to Chicago, and actually, roomed with Phil there, and went to the University of Illinois in Chicago to get my pre-med. I ended up landing a job at the same place that Phil was working. I was, my first job there was a graveyard shift VHS tape duplicator.
Oh, nice.
But I worked in video post to pay my way through college, but all this time we're talking about, hey, with this new technology that's starting to emerge, including nonlinear editing, graphics, and then computer animation, what if we took what we did back in our puppet days and applied it to this new technology? And we were sort of in the right place at the right time to be able to do that. And the company that we worked for, Renaissance Video, acquired the very first computer animated system in the region.
Wow.
It was the same hardware and software that Dire Straits did their music video on, Money for Nothing, if you remember that back from the 80s. But it was just really blocky and really, just rough animation, computer animation. Meanwhile, John Lasseter over in California, an ex-Disney animator, became part of this startup company called Pixar, who was doing this new experimental animation with computers where characters were squishy and lovable, and just sort of, this really caught Phil's attention in particular, who was working on, learning computer animation, and really inspired this idea that, wow, we can, with this new technology, we can create characters that are believable and lovable, and you can squish them up and down and make them cute. And so that's kind of what drove that. And so we basically came up with the concept of Veggie Tales because we needed simple characters with no limbs, no hair, no clothes, to be able to tell stories and be able to afford it. And so Phil actually had modeled a candy bar as a first character and put some eyes and a mouth on it. And his wife, Lisa, came by and she said, I don't think moms are going to like their kids learning great values from candy bars. Biblical values from candy bars. So vegetables. So yeah, that was it. So this was in the late 80s, early 90s, and we were able to raise some money to create the very first show, Where's God When I'm Scared, which came out Christmas of 93, which was a full year or so, or a year and a half before Toy Story, which was the very first computer animated feature film. Of course, Pixar had been doing some animated shorts, which actually inspired, us. But we were the first computer animated series ever, which was just, an amazing place to be at the time. So, but we at the heart of it, we wanted to tell stories that parents could use as a resource to pass on biblical values to their kids, because we just really felt like there was a need for that. And in my own ministry, I went to Bible college and then wanted to go into medicine because I wanted to be a medical missionary. And so I felt like, this is helping people, helping kids in particular, because I was looking at pediatrics. That's what I felt called to do. I had no idea that God had, specific plans for me apart from medicine. I grew up in a military family. We moved all over the country and the world, but there was no model for me for life and ministry in the arts. It was always something that I really enjoyed, that I felt I was gifted in. But, when I set off to go to college, I felt like, okay, well, I got to get a real job for God and, do this. But God just sort of directed my path along the way. And I actually used we mentioned Esther when we were talking earlier. For such a time as this, I was, I felt like, kind of like Esther, where it's like, God just laid this opportunity on me, and it's something that I was not planning for. I was just kind of following the path that I felt like He had set me on, but He was, he was setting that path before me and led me in a direction that I never would have guessed. And I'm just so thankful to have been part of the journey for so long.
If you think about how many people as a doctor, let's just say you became a surgeon and you had surgery. If you think about how many people you could have had surgery on, maybe save their lives, right? Could have been in the hundreds or thousands. But if you think about how many souls you affected through VeggieTales, it's in the millions. And so I think that I don't think you missed your calling at all for that. Man. And I tell you what, though, we'll be right back, and we're going to talk about there's something that happened to VeggieTales, and I want to talk a little bit about that. So we will be right back.